will be the whites.
The whites. So this is the biggest mystery. We'll get clearer as the night goes on. White's 22-year-old special liqueur. There's a name. A name that has deserved the liqueur at the tail end. And my God, the darkness of that. But it's odd. Belfast is a strange place because Belfast, for most of its history, has been a liminal space between Ireland and Scotland, between Irish whiskey and Scotch whiskey. You know, it is pragmatically much closer to Glasgow than it is to Dublin. You know, so there's a lot of whiskey going back and forth in this kind of dirty tide. And after, unfortunately, you know, and the sob story that gets told in Irish whiskey is Ireland embraced the colony, or didn't embrace the colony, so Scotland did, and that was the ruination of Irish whiskey. That's not actually true. By the turn of the 20th century, Belfast alone was producing more grain whiskey than the rest of the island combined. You know, Belfast was a powerhouse of grain whiskey. But again, as we talked about in the first ones, a powerhouse dissolved. So whenever you get these Belfast bonders, I've got the hiccups. You wonder where the stock came from.
Yeah.
And when you start getting odd numbers like 22, you really wonder. You think, what the hell is going on there? 22. There's clearly closed distilleries all over the place, loose stock floating around the city, and people are taking like really old stuff that was never sold because nobody knew what to do with it. And how do you move that on? So White's, for those who haven't spent time in Belfast, is a very prominent pub in Belfast from the 1600s. It's a very old pub, White's Tavern. And this is a pre-70s, but not that far pre-70s, like 1960s, late 1960s, bottling from White's. So you wonder, what the hell is in this? Is it still blended Scotch? Is it, you know, is it Irish from down south? It's not Bushmills, it's not Cumber. You still get that weird... Okay, it smells... The first one smelled like Scotch. Full stop. That is not Irish whiskey. There's a little bit of... Along with the white tire, there's that weird, like, felt tip marker way. It's heavy. It's not the lightness that you usually get. But it is there. There is a weird characteristic that might be taken for Irish. Absolutely.
More cinder toffee on the nose, but a little bit of diesel on the palate. Residue, like you're saying, industrial. It's quite chewy, oily.
Well, I'll put it this way. I would be more inclined, if I was to guess, a dead Ulster distillery rather than blended Scotch. Absolutely. There isn't the wateriness that there was in sample number one, and there isn't the peat. You know, and so that, to me, screams dead pot still distillery with aging stock knocking about. Most likely contender around this area is Cumber. It's still a little more watery than Cumber would be, and there's no necessity that it could be one thing. But definitely, you look at Belfast Distillery, so there's a big wash of DCL that was kicking around for ages, where DCL closed Avonil and Connswater and didn't know what to do with it, and it all ended up in blended Scotch, except a lot of it that was sold locally. 1936, Dunville's closes, and there's a lot of that washing about. 22 years is a long time, like 1936 to 46 to 50. You know, you're knocking into that space. And White's held the name, and I don't know the dates, but White's Tavern held the name 22 for more than 1 year, I'll put it that way. So a lot of the stuff might be older, and it was stock they acquired, say, 8 years before. You know, so you're playing these kinds of numerical games, trying to figure out what is in anything. But this definitely, it smells more Irish than Scotch by far. You know? And you're getting that, like, instead of wet tire, like rubber meets felt tip marker meets, peach fuzz. And peach fuzz, for anyone who was on the bloody pot still talk last night, peach fuzz for me is a big cornerstone of old Irish pot still. That weird, like, not quite right fruitiness, that weird like, musty tint on fruitiness.
Mm-hmm.
And this definitely has that in spades. That screams Irish pot still. I would guess this is old Cumberstock, brought into a local pub. Would be and those eras make sense because you're talking like let's say 1966, 70s, 56, 46. Cumber's still alive.
Just post-war. Mm-hmm.
It is clearly not Bushmills. So you're left with what's left and what's local. It does not taste like imported Scotch. But again, we're playing this kind of guessing game whenever we're dealing with the North. This shared space between Ireland and Scotland, this shared space between liquids, industries, etc. But this...
It was amazing as well.
If I was to be obliged to put money down, I would say Cumber.
I mean, it's amazing as well. It's in history terms, it's not that long ago, but it might as well be medieval almost. It's that the information's gone. The ability to try and connect the dots. You're left to guess. And yeah, I guess that's part of the appeal. But also, people want to know, don't they, what they're drinking? But back then, no chance really.